Daniel Carter was not born into comfort. He didn't wake up to warm breakfasts or bedtime stories. His childhood was filled with silence, not because it was peaceful, but because it was empty. His father walked out when Daniel was just 5. No goodbye, no explanation, just a quiet slam of the door that echoed for years. His mother, Jane, worked 2 jobs. She was never home before dark. And even when she was, exhaustion replaced conversation. Daniel quickly learned that wishing for a better life wasn't enough. He had to make one. At the age of 8, while other kids played outside, Daniel was learning to cook, clean, and care for his younger sister. He became a parent long before he became a teenager, and yet he never complained. Instead, he wore his responsibilities like armor. Every struggle made him stronger. There were nights when the fridge was empty and the lights were out because bills went on. But Daniel learned how to survive without depending on anyone. He started delivering newspapers before school. He mowed lawns after school, and he studied late at night using a flashlight because the power had been shut off again. Most kids his age were learning how to ride bikes. Daniel was learning how to stay calm when collectors banged on the door. He was growing in silence, not with noise, but with purpose. He learned that pain wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. Life wasn't giving him hardship to break him. He was building something inside him that no school could teach. Resilience, grit, discipline, courage, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, the kind that stands tall when everything around you is falling apart. One winter, his mother fell ill and couldn't work for weeks. The little money they had disappeared overnight. Daniel didn't panic. He got creative. He started selling handwritten poems at school for 50 cents. Kids laughed, some mocked him, but a few bought them. And by the end of the week, he'd earned enough to buy groceries. That was the first time Daniel realized the power inside him, not just to survive, but to rise. He wasn't a victim, he was a fighter. Not the kind that throws punches, but the kind that refuses to surrender. His past didn't define him, it refined him. The broken home, the empty nights, the hunger, none of it destroyed him. It all became the reason he stood tall later in life. Because Daniel Carter wasn't just born in struggle, he was raised in strength. Daniel had a dream. It wasn't big to others, but to him it was everything. He wanted to be a writer, to take the pain he had lived and turn it into power for others. He wanted his words to make people feel understood, to help them heal. But when he told people about his dream, they didn't cheer, they laughed. You, a writer? Be realistic, Daniel. That's not a job, that's a fantasy. Even his English teacher, the one person he thought would understand, said, "It's good to have hobbies, but focus on a real future." Daniel felt the sting of those words more than any slap. It would have been easier to give up, to believe them, to shrink his dream down to their level of understanding, but he didn't. Instead, he wrote more. He wrote on napkins, in the margins of old textbooks, on the back of receipts. Words were his oxygen. He didn't need approval, he needed expression. Every time someone told him to stop, he wrote harder. He turned laughter into fuel. He knew that people often mock what they don't understand. They see someone chasing a dream and it reminds them of the ones they gave up on. Daniel wasn't angry at them, he just didn't want to be like them. He wanted to wake up every day excited to create something meaningful, so he kept going. He studied the greats, read everything he could get his hands on, not because he had to, but because he loved it. He started a blog. At first, no one read it. Then 5 people, then 50, then 500. One night, he posted a story about growing up without a father. The next morning, his inbox was full of messages from people all over the world saying, "Thank you. You wrote what I couldn't say." That's when Daniel knew his dream was real. Not because others finally saw it, but because he never stopped believing in it when no one else did. He didn't need the world to understand his dream. He just needed the courage to protect it, to fight for it, to keep breathing life into it until it stood on its own. And it did. Daniel Carter became a writer, not because it was easy, but because he stayed when others walked away, because he kept writing when the world laughed. He proved that sometimes the only person who needs to believe in your dream is you, and that's enough. Because belief, when protected by action, becomes reality. Daniel didn't silence the noise. He simply made his voice louder, unbroken, unshaken, unstoppable. Daniel Carter believed in loyalty. He believed in trust. And more than anything, he believed in people, especially in his best friend, Michael. They met during their first year of college. Both shared a love for literature, coffee, and long conversations about life and dreams. Michael was the only person Daniel trusted with his most private writings. Every night, Daniel would write for hours, short stories, journal entries, poetry. He poured his soul onto paper, and every morning he would share it with Michael, who always said, "Man, this is gold. You're going to be famous one day." It felt good to be seen. It felt even better to be supported. So Daniel gave him access to his journals, his ideas, even his personal novel in progress. One day, Daniel submitted a story to a university writing competition, a story he had been working on for months. But to his shock, it was disqualified. They said it had already been submitted. Daniel was confused. He hadn't submitted it anywhere else. Then he saw the list of winners. Third place, Michael. The same story, the same title, the same words. Daniel's heart sank. It felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs. He confronted Michael, hoping for a misunderstanding, but Michael didn't even deny it. He shrugged and said, "I just wanted to see if it was really as good as you thought. I didn't think it would win." That betrayal burned deep, not because of the competition, not because of the prize, but because it came from the one person Daniel thought would never hurt him. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he simply walked away. He spent weeks in silence, questioning everything. Should he stop writing? Was it worth it? What if everyone just wanted to use him? But in that silence, something stirred, a thought, a realization. He had survived worse. This wasn't the end. It was a lesson. Some people will see your light and try to steal it because they can't find their own. But no one can steal your purpose. No one can rob your voice unless you let them. So Daniel wrote again, not for revenge, not to prove a point, but because it was who he was. Michael faded into the past, but Daniel's words carried forward, and this time he guarded them fiercely. Betrayal taught him not to stop trusting, but to be wise about who he shared his soul with. Some people are meant to be chapters, but they don't get to write your ending. Daniel had always been active. He loved running. It was his therapy, his thinking space, his escape. Every morning at sunrise, he'd put on his shoes and take off down the street. No music, just the rhythm of his breath and feet on pavement. Until one day, everything changed. It was supposed to be a regular morning run. A car came around the corner too fast. Daniel barely saw it. The impact sent him flying. He woke up in the hospital, legs shattered, spine bruised. Pain was everywhere. The doctor said, "You'll recover, but running, that might not happen again." For someone else, that might have been just news. But for Daniel, it felt like his identity had been ripped away. Running wasn't just an activity, it was a part of his soul, and now it was gone. Days turned into weeks in a hospital bed, muscles weakening, hope fading. He watched life move on from a window while he sat still. There were moments he cried alone, moments he questioned why, moments he wanted to give up. But then something inside him whispered, "You're still breathing. That means you're not finished." So he began again. Tiny movements, physical therapy sessions that felt like punishment, one step at a time, literally. Progress was slow, painful, frustrating, but Daniel kept showing up. Even when it hurt, even when he failed, he got back up. The first time he stood without support, he cried, not because of the pain, but because he knew this wasn't the end of his story. He walked again, then jogged, then danced. Yes, danced, not perfectly, not without effort, but with joy. The kind that comes from knowing how far you've come. The kind that only people who've fallen truly understand. Daniel proved the doctors wrong, but more importantly, he proved something to himself. Your body can be broken, but your spirit doesn't have to be. Pain may slow you down, but it doesn't have to stop you. Every scar became a reminder that he survived, that he rose, that he kept going. He didn't just walk again, he flew inside. Because no matter what life takes from you, it can't take your will unless you surrender it. And Daniel never did. Daniel's first published book didn't sell well. The excitement of getting published quickly faded. The reviews were tough, unoriginal, too emotional, lacked structure. He felt crushed. He thought, maybe I'm not as good as I believed. But then he remembered his journey, the hunger, the silence, the betrayal, the accident. He didn't come this far to give up now. So he read every review, took the useful parts, and ignored the noise. He went back to the keyboard, started writing again, better this time, clearer, bolder. He studied his craft, improved his storytelling, and every time he was tempted to quit, he reminded himself why he started. He wasn't writing for fame. He was writing to help people feel less alone, to remind someone that broken doesn't mean beaten. He submitted to dozens of publishers. Rejections piled up like unpaid bills. But one small publisher took a chance on his second book. It didn't make headlines, but it made hearts listen. Emails started coming in. Your story helped me through depression. I felt seen. I gave this to my son. Thank you. That was all the fuel Daniel needed. His books didn't become overnight bestsellers, but they became lifelines for readers who needed them. And that meant more than any award ever could. Resilience is not about bouncing back fast. It's about choosing to rise slowly, steadily, no matter how many times you fall. Daniel rose again and again through rejection, through criticism, through silence, until his voice became too strong to ignore. And it all started with one decision: to keep going. Not because it was easy, but because giving up would have meant losing the story he was born to tell. And Daniel Carter wasn't born to quit. He was born to rise. Daniel Carter had been through enough to carry a lifetime of grudges. He had every reason to be angry at the father who abandoned him, at the people who laughed at his dreams, at the friend who stole his work, and at life itself for the pain it brought. But Daniel knew something most people don't learn until it's too late. Anger is heavy. Bitterness is poison you drink, hoping it hurts someone else. He carried that weight for years. Silent resentment, quiet rage. It drained him. Not all at once, but slowly. Every time he thought about Michael's betrayal, his stomach tightened. Every time he remembered the teachers who doubted him, he clenched his fists. Until one day, he looked in the mirror and didn't like who he was becoming. He wasn't free. He was chained to memories, held hostage by the past. He realized something had to change. Not the past, it couldn't be changed, but his response to it could. So Daniel sat down one quiet morning and wrote a letter, not to send, but to release. To Michael, he wrote, "You hurt me, but I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I do." To his absent father, he wrote, "You left me broken, but I became strong. I forgive you, not because you returned, but because I've moved forward." To his teachers, he said, "Thank you for not believing in me. You made me believe in myself." Each letter was a weight lifted, each word a step toward freedom. But Daniel didn't forget. He remembered, not with hate, but with wisdom. He learned who to trust, how to set boundaries, how to protect his peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back to what broke you. It means healing enough to walk away from it without anger. It's strength, not weakness. It's power, not permission. Daniel let go, and in doing so, he grew lighter, happier, more alive, because peace is never about the absence of pain. It's about the presence of understanding. And Daniel Carter understood that true freedom begins where resentment ends. Daniel was 45 when he started over, not because he had failed, but because something inside him still burned brighter than ever. Most people his age were settling down, slowing down, but Daniel was just getting started. He had a new dream. He wanted to help others write, to give young people the voice he never had growing up. So he started a small writing program at the local library. No sponsors, no fancy setup, just an old chalkboard, donated chairs, and a room full of young hearts waiting to be heard. At first, only 2 students showed up. One was shy. The other didn't even like writing. But Daniel welcomed them with the same fire he gave his readers. He taught them how to write with honesty, how to turn emotion into expression, how to find their truth and share it. Word spread. By the end of the year, the room was full every Saturday. Some kids came from broken homes. Some struggled with confidence. But they all had stories, and Daniel gave them the space to tell them. He didn't just teach writing. He taught courage. The courage to speak, to heal, to hope. People asked him, why now? He smiled and said, because passion doesn't come with an expiration date. It doesn't matter if you're 18 or 80. If something inside you is still calling, then it's still yours to answer. Daniel never believed in the word too late. He believed in starting again and again, if that's what it took. And because he started, others did too. His students began to win contests, publish books, find their confidence, their voices. Daniel became more than a writer. He became a mentor, a mirror, proof that life doesn't end when you get older. Sometimes it begins. If you're brave enough to listen to your passion and humble enough to start from the beginning, anything is possible. Daniel proved that age doesn't limit dreams. Fear does. But once you let go of fear, you find freedom. And with freedom, you fly. There was a moment in Daniel's life when success came knocking. Big publishing houses started calling. They offered him money, a lot of it. But there was a catch. They wanted him to write what would sell, not what he believed in. They wanted him to follow trends, to dilute his message, to be less honest, less raw, less him. Tone it down, they said. Make it easier to digest. Daniel sat in a room full of executives holding a pen over $1 million contract, and he put the pen down. He walked away. They were shocked. He was calm because he knew something they didn't. Success without integrity is failure in disguise. Comfort without character is a prison dressed like paradise. Daniel had worked too hard to become someone he wasn't, going to throw it away for a paycheck. He went home, brewed a cup of coffee, and wrote the way he always had, with truth. The next few years weren't easy. Money was tight. Opportunities came and went. But Daniel slept peacefully every night because he never sold out. He never traded values for validation. And in the long run, that decision opened doors he never expected. A small independent publisher known for raw and honest voices reached out. They gave him full creative freedom. His next book became a quiet bestseller, not because it followed trends, but because it touched hearts. And people can feel when something is real. Readers wrote in saying, "Your words changed me. They felt true." Daniel smiled. He had chosen character over comfort and won. He proved that real success isn't about how far you go. It's about how far you go. It's about how true you stay while getting there. The world will try to buy your voice, shape your path, and sell your soul, but only if you let it. And Daniel Carter never did. He walked his path, even when it was hard, even when it was lonely, because he knew who he was. And when you know who you are, you don't need to be anyone else. Character is the quiet strength that carries you through every storm. And Daniel's character, it never broke. Daniel Carter had never been the loudest voice in the room. He never chased the spotlight, never begged for applause. He wrote quietly, lived simply, and believed that impact wasn't measured in numbers, but in the quiet shifts of the heart. There was a time when he dreamed of standing on grand stages, of hearing his name cheered in crowded halls. But life had humbled him, taught him that not every seed you plant grows where the world can see it. Sometimes it grows in shadows. Silently, steadily. He remembered one cold winter evening, walking home from a small community event. He had just spoken to a group of 7 teenagers, only 7. Some had looked bored. One had even fallen asleep. He could have felt defeated, but as he walked through the empty streets, snow crunching under his boots, a girl ran up behind him. Her name was Ellie. She had sat in the back the whole time, hood over her head, not saying a word. Now, out of breath and shivering, she looked up at Daniel and whispered, "Your story, it made me feel like I matter. Thank you." Then she ran off. That one sentence carried more weight than 1,000 claps. That moment stayed with Daniel because it reminded him of why he started. Not to impress the world, but to reach even one heart that felt unseen. Daniel kept showing up at schools, at libraries, at shelters, places where people didn't always cheer, where sometimes they didn't even look up, but he spoke anyway, shared anyway, loved anyway, because you never know who's listening. You never know whose life is hanging by a thread, and your words might be the knot that keeps them holding on. Years later, he received a letter from a man named Joshua. "I heard you speak when I was 15. I was angry, lost. That night, I decided not to end my life. Your story saved me. I just wanted to say thank you." Daniel read it in silence. Tears rolled down his cheeks. That's when he knew. True influence doesn't ask for recognition. It gives freely, even when no one claps, even when the room is empty, even when the world forgets your name, because if one life breathes easier because of your story, your time on earth was worth it. Daniel Carter didn't become a superstar. He became something greater, a light. And lights don't need applause, they just need to shine. There came a time when Daniel Carter was old. His hair had turned silver. His steps had slowed. His hands, once quick to type, now trembled with age. But his eyes, they still burned with fire. He had lived through storms. He had battled self-doubt, betrayal, pain, and silence. He had known success and sorrow. But through it all, one thing never changed: his purpose. He still woke up early every morning, even when it hurt to move. Still brewed his coffee. Still sat by the window with his journal. He wrote with a pen now, slowly, carefully, every word chosen with love. You see, the world often thinks passion belongs to the young, that purpose fades with age. But Daniel proved otherwise. He believed the fire inside doesn't go out unless you stop feeding it. One afternoon, a young man named Caleb came to visit. He was a writer, struggling, tired, ready to quit. "I feel like I'm shouting into a void," Caleb said. "No one's listening. Maybe I'm not meant to do this." Daniel looked at him with kind, weathered eyes. He reached for his old journal, opened it to a blank page, and said, "Right here, just one sentence." Caleb hesitated, then wrote. One sentence turned into 3, then 10, and before he knew it, he was smiling. Daniel whispered, "You see, the fire's still there. You just forgot how to feed it." They sat in silence, surrounded by books, memories, and warmth. That evening, Caleb left with something he didn't arrive with: hope. And Daniel, he watched the sunset, heart full, because even in his final years, he was still igniting fires in others. He still believed, still created, still dreamed, because life doesn't end when your body slows. It ends when your spirit gives up. And Daniel Carter had made a promise to himself long ago: never let the fire die, not for rejection, not for pain, not for fear, because once that fire goes out, the world loses something beautiful. So he kept it burning, word by word, day by day, until his last breath. And long after he was gone, the world still felt his warmth, not because of how loudly he burned, but because he never stopped. And in doing so, he taught others how to keep their fire alive, unbroken.